The Color Child Welfare Conference is the only conference in the state of Wisconsin that convenes to focus solely on the needs of Black children, youth, and their families who are involved in the foster care system. On May 8, 2017, almost 400 community stakeholders and 67 local organizations came together at the Milwaukee Art Museum for food, fun, laughter, and training by a number of industry experts in the interest of preserving and supporting Black families. We certainly hope to see you at next year's conference. Enjoy the video.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I'm here with my colleague and long-term partner in all this, Mr. Pressie, and we'll both be talking at various times. We can diagnose this because we're mental health professionals. We both have ADHD, and we move around a lot. So the fact that we're given a microphone that's like oppressing us here now, I'm not feeling the vibe so much. But we will move from the mic at some point, and if anybody ever has time where they're having difficulty hearing, raise your hand or something. We'll make sure we're repeating things. But this is going to be an interactive thing. So we're going to be getting people in the audience to talk. And one of the things that I want people to be mindful of is that this is an echoey space. And as in class settings, it's the same basic thing. There's a principle, and that is the louder it gets, the louder you want to get. And we're going to try to do the opposite. We're going to try to get softer in response to it getting louder. We'll try to keep the noise down, or it'll be a big echo chamber in here. So just be mindful of that. And I guess that's it. Are we ready to get started?
We're ready.
All right. All right. We are a group called Milwaukee Affiliate for Social Living. We've got a website and a blog that we'll be happy to share. I didn't think of putting on my slide, but if people after the show today, if you want to find out more about us, I'd be happy to share some of that. We also work for Sebastian Family Psychology Practice. A show of hands, who knows of Sebastian Family? Just basically everybody in here has been doing good work, serving the underserved for almost 25 years now, and we're proud to be part of that. All right, so with that being said, we're curious a little bit now who you all are, and I'm interested to see who did we bring. And I'd like to see, show if anybody interested in sharing who you are and what brought you here, just so we get a kind of a smattering of, yes.
My name is Liz Rose, and I'm interested in what's happening in our community, especially in my
Ms. Rose is here, interested in what's happening with our young people in our communities. Thank you, Ms. Rose. Who else is here? Gives introductions. And I'm curious, in terms of, we have mental health providers, we have social service workers, do we have foster parents? Who do we have represented here? Wow, okay, all right, so social work is definitely in the house today. Who else? UWM Social Work School, excellent, super. Who else do we have? And your name, sir? Jim, please meet you, Jim. And back here, hand. Juvenile justice, yes. Oh, excellent, super, great, super. Cool, Sean, thanks, excellent. So that kind of gets me an idea, sure, a broader, yes? Mm-hmm. I'm hearing a lot of mental health, I'm hearing a lot of community workers, I'm hearing people that are teaching also, that are kind of with maybe the mindset of we're also teaching diversity and, you know, kind of on that frequency. In the back? Cool, all right, David, super, thank you. And anybody else that wants to share, particularly if it sounds like, do we have any foster parents? Show of hands, anybody who's here primarily in the role as a foster parent? Anybody that runs a youth organization that doesn't necessarily do treatment or mental health, but in some way does services for the youth? Anybody that fits that category? Oh, all right, so we got, okay, great. So we got a lot of clinicians here and a lot of people that work really, as I would say, in the trenches and hands-on. We really wanted to devise this presentation so that it applies to everybody. So initially the language on the presentation talked about counselors, psychologists, social workers. But I also know this discussion involves many more people, and we also wanted to make it clear that Aaron and I didn't want to come in as experts. What we wanted to come in on instead is facilitators, where we realize there's expertise amongst us. You know, if we only had, with the thing of all the degrees and all the experience that we have in this room, if we decided to limit expertise to 2 people, that would really limit the kind of insight and wisdom that we can pull from a conversation like this. So it will be somewhat non-traditional, and one of the things that we know as providers, and I jumped into, Aaron works works in multiple hats. One of the things that he does is AODA, and also with regards to mental health, and he works largely with youth and families. I'm a psychologist. I teach at Mount Mary. I have done assessment in the past. I do a lot of consulting, and I also do therapy in-home, usually with families. So we both have a very comparable pedigrees where we're in the community a lot providing hands-on services. So that's the hat that we're wearing, and a lot of times I'll go in teacher mode, and that's a hat that I wear also, teaching about and understanding this stuff kind of conceptually. So you kind of notice we'll default. But the conversations, we think questions are powerful. Questions change us. And when you ask a question to a population and you really start listening to what the population says, what the group, whoever you're communicating with, says, if you're doing this right, you're getting new information. Think about that. The presentation we brought today, we didn't carry it in. You brought the presentation in. And only in an open dialogue do we come across new information. Otherwise, it's all top-down, and we're providing a perspective that you can either agree with or not agree with, but it's not very expansive. So that's the idea today, is we're going to get really in a dialogue. And I'm hoping people get into this and have fun with it. Questions, and related to that, what brought you here? What do you think you want to get out of this? Now that I kind of shared what this is, what brought you here, and what are you wanting to get out of it? Any brave souls? Ms. Rose, yes, thank you.
Well, what I would hope to get out of here is who's doing what, teaching what, helping what about you, and what contribution or solutions have been maybe suggested or in the process to make the changes that are ultimately.
Awesome. So did everybody hear that? Ms. Rose is really, if I'm getting this right, is here for almost a networking purpose. Who's doing what already? And being able to understand, walk away from here with a better connection to other people, which is interesting, Ms. Rose, because we didn't pay her to put her up for this conversation here. This is all organic. This is really why people, I think, come to conferences and presentations. It's lots of time not to be told new things by the experts, but to network. And before we're done, we will have an opportunity to network. In fact, we're going to end today with some networking stuff. So part of your job then before you leave is to collect business cards and contacts. So think about that as an opportunity too. Don't lose that opportunity today, either after our presentation or just before you leave today. And we're going to start facilitating some of that today also. What else brought people here? All right, great, super. Tell me more. These are definitely not paid endorsements by these people. I'm getting sweating here, but thank you. And I appreciate that when you have a reputation in a community, it's a good thing, but it's also an intimidating thing. And that is, how do I earn it? How do I live into that? So that's something that we're striving to do today also, and part of the reason that we want to have this conversation is because we realize that not everybody's having this conversation. And this is a conversation we've had the opportunity to have in the past, so I'm glad to do it again. Anything else? What else brought people here today? Yeah, yeah. Liz? Cool, all right, super. So Liz is wearing that hat when she's coming in, resources and tools. Anything else? We've got networking, resources, understanding somebody who knows that you're, all right, these people are gonna have something to say. Oh, great. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's excellent, and that is almost to the T what we've designed for this today. And if people are interested in understanding, one thing that I want to be clear on though is that diversity impacts upon all of us. And many people will say, well, if I'm a Caucasian person and I'm historically European descent, I know that I have to be mindful of cultural diversity. And I think that's a framework that hopefully everybody who's had formal training now in mental health in the last 20 years or so is thinking about. But diversity actually applies to everybody. You know, just because you're representative of a minority group doesn't mean that you're representative of that minority group. I think that's the actual point. Or of other groups, you know. So every one of us has to kind of carry ourselves and know who we are and what we're about, and understanding not only how do our biases shape us, but how do our clients' biases about us shape what happens in that hour? And that's something that impacts upon everybody in this room too. So if everybody's got we're in this general mind space now of doing some networking, of getting some information, of being able to engage in some of these conversations, I think now we're ready to move forward. Seem to have lost oh, there we go. We do have some objectives that were kind of nice, nice conceptualizations here that we thought we were going to be sharing and kind of organize what we did, so you're going to be leaving with these for sure. Identify what it means to be culturally competent or responsive helping professional. We're gonna do that not so much by a definition, but by a process today. So learn by doing today. Emphasize the need to understand cultural values and worldviews of different cultural groups. Explore how to disagree with clients' values, beliefs, or norms without demonizing or devaluing or compromising your professional values. And finally, and this is my favorite one, consider the bi-directional impact of the client-professional encounters. Not only does the client change in healthy interactions, we change also. That's an essential message that we want people to be walking away with today. So we're going to do it in three parts, really, and then a closure. One is we're going to examine today culture and power and how these two things have to do with each other. And then we're going to go into culture and values and look at how these things relate to one another. And then we're going to look at health and healing through bidirectional growth and change. And at that point in time, we're going to change how we do things a little bit, and that part's going to be more like a discussion. So by then, I'm hoping people are going to be loosened up and we're going to be able to talk freely. And then in the end, we're going to have a call for cross-cultural service. So before we're done, everyone here will be called into this discussion of what it really means to embody cross-cultural service. And now we need your help. Uh-oh. We're not doing this without you. This is what we need. 2 note takers. So, as you see, we have some paper along here, and we're going to be brainstorming today. 3 different times. And we need someone with good enough handwriting that would actually, your handwriting doesn't have to be good, you have to feel comfortable putting it up there. That's what I should say. Somebody that's comfortable writing, and then if you see each one of these is each piece of paper is another piece of paper after it, we're going to have a friend, we're going to need another person that can help that person take paper down without messing up the other paper underneath it. So 2 volunteers, and this is going to be fun. Did I say that? And you get colored markers. All right, great. We have volunteer number 1. And why don't you come on over here? Round of applause for Katie. All right. And Katie, do you feel comfortable writing? Are you a writer? All right, good. Good. All right, and then Katie's going to need some help. And at times, too, what might happen is we might end up getting a point where ideas are coming quicker than we can write them. So the second writer might end up helping Katie write things down also, and then help with our paper. Who wants to help Katie? Look at Katie here. All right, great, super. And your name is? Angela. Round of applause for Katie and Angela. Oop, oop. Oop, oop, and let me go backwards here. We aren't done yet. Okay, we also need a computer scribe. Now, this is the type of person who likes to sit and take notes that doesn't necessarily like to have to talk a whole lot, but is good at taking notes. Is there anybody that'd be interested in taking notes? And the email list that we're generating, we're going to send everybody who puts their email a list of what we did today on this computer. So would anybody be interested in being our note scribe? We've got a computer ready for you, and you can't get the computer. It's free for yours for the day until the presentation is over. Anybody interested in taking notes for us? I would love to have a computer scribe. All right, Jolene, I don't even have a grade hanging over your head right now to manipulate you with it. Given her an intensive training, and she's ready to do her job. We need one more thing. This is the most important part. Approximately 58 active participants. All right, who's with me? Round of applause. Who's going to be an active participant? All right, super, because this presentation can't happen without you. All right, so first part, culture and power. Do you want to do the questions on this one, or should?
I'll do these.
Next one, all right, sure. All right, so this is the first group of questions, and I'm going to keep an eye on our time because I know that we can get talking about these things. Great. So the first is an exploration of how do these two ideas of culture and power interact. And I'm going to take this from the audience now. I want each of you to think about this. What inherent power do we in this room possess in the roles that each of us are serving currently? I want you to think about that. And you really want to be thinking from the standpoint of the people that we serve. Many times we feel I'm just so-and-so, and we disempower ourselves. But in actuality, we have anybody that's in this room, anybody that gets an invitation to an event like this, gets a pass and has a title that they call themselves that gets them into the door, has some degree of power. Ms. Rose? All right, so number one is, and we're going to get this in a kind of bullet point form, the power to communicate with the community. Think about that. Think about that. What power is there in communication? And that each one of us has the power to communicate with the community. Excellent. What's that? Say again? Advocacy. Advocacy. We have the power to advocate. You know, when disempowered people raise their voice, it's often called complaining. When people who have power raise their voice, it's called advocacy, right? And advocacy carries a different weight than complaining. All right? What else? What inherent power do we have in this room? Think about the positions you have. In the back. The power to question other people's decisions. I've had many team meetings that I've been on where providers sit with their hands underneath their seat, and they won't ask questions. They give up their power. Thank you. Other power that we have. The power to navigate systems. How many people have had that experience where you have a client that is in need of some sort of social service programming or something, and the way they access it is so darn confusing that you don't even fully understand it, right? We have the ability to network and to navigate in a way that clients, people that we're serving, often won't. Thank you. Other things that, where's our power? Power to be a referral source. I got a buddy who does this thing. You want to go over and get help from him? You know, we can do that. What else do we have the power to do? Mr. Pressie. We have the power to change a person's life, whether it's power positive or negative, spoken with experience. We change people's lives for the better or for the worst. Think about that. What more power is that? We have billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar governmental programs. Their only hope is that they might change lives. There isn't a person in this room who's not going to change a life in the role that they have. Other things. The power of documentation. Is that clear? Think about what's, did anybody hear this awful thing? I hated this as a learning in graduate and undergraduate school. If you didn't document it, it didn't happen, right? I don't like that because I've also learned in social services, and unfortunately not everybody doing what they need to, some people have made the reverse true. If you did document it, it did happen, which isn't the case, you know? But documentation has a power. What you choose to put in and what you choose to leave out can have a big impact on the outcome. Other things that people have power, where's our power? The power to share information, A and B. Think about it. When participant here mentioned, oh, I knew Aaron and Ben's name from the community, and I came for that reason. And that's why people come oftentimes to you, to your clinic or your practice, because you've got a reputation. And that allows you the ability to share information. If I was just a guy on the street and I had a perspective on this stuff, that's not going to bestow much power on me to be able to share information. It doesn't mean the same thing as if you're the expert or the professional or so forth. So we are given the responsibility to share information. Anything else? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. 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 The power to know your history. That was robbed from many of people, and still is, on a daily basis. Right. Now you can get it. Yeah. We've actually spoken multiple times in conversations before about genealogy, and there's another presentation that we've done, we'll do at some point, where we actually have somebody share. You can go back as far as you can in your own personal history, and you look at if we know one another's history. If you have points of reference to one another's history, that's empowering. But if you don't know someone's history, think about if you're working with Burmese or Hmong clients and you don't know the social political history from which they came. You have no reference. And once you know that information, the power to know your history, and I think the power to know other histories also, because once we know someone else's history, oh yeah, I know about the 888 rebellion. I know what happened in Burma that got this all set off. It empowers people because it validates that experience. One last thing, and I'm going to kind of chum the water for this one. As clinicians, what do we have the power to do that non-clinicians don't have the power to do? What do we have the power to do that non-clinicians don't have the power to do? Since there are a lot of clinicians here. Diagnose. That's a power. Whoa, do you hear this? We have the power to recommend whether people are in or out of their home? Think about that. What gave you the right? I mean, really think about that. All right, next question. I just want you to think as you're going through this, how is power bestowed? Think about that. Think about that. We're not going to dialogue just because it'll take a little time for this one. What systems were involved in that? Who gave you that power? Think about that. What are the parameters and boundaries placed on this power? We have these things, they're called ethics codes. If you step outside of them, your power goes away, right? So we have this certain social, political infrastructure where we get our power from. And I want people just to be thinking about where you get your power from. Think about that. Who gave you the in to the group of power holders? And now let's talk about our clients. Oh yeah, we have, Ms. Rose, your hand, yes? Well, power of a paralegal. These are people that are understated power. Their idea that these are the ones who actually deals with the client, the lawyer or the paralegal. And there's a social work aspect to that. There's a networking aspect. There's a power and access to power thing. And because you're a paralegal now, you have certain jurisdiction over what's going to happen in this person's life. Now let's take a moment and think, what type of power do the persons we serve possess? What are they experts on? And what should they have power or control over? And I'm not saying should in the sense of in an ideal world, I'm talking about in our world. The way the world is set up, there's a way that they should be empowered. Sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. So what power do persons we serve possess? What are they experts on? And what should they have power or control over? Jolene? Yes. They're the expert on their own life story. I hope that if you've never had a mental health professor suggest to you otherwise, that the person's in charge of their story. I've actually had clients come in with their parents or grandparents or whatever, and their parents or grandparents are always modifying the story that they're sharing with me. Oh, that's not what really happened, And when you see that happen in a session, what happens to the person who's sharing the story? They shut down. Or the social worker comes in, or the person who's on the team that's going to give you their story, and it takes the client's story away from them. So they're the experts. They have the power to tell their story. What else do they have power over? What power do the people we serve possess? They have power to give networking. Let me a short way of writing that maybe. Power to their natural supports. So if anybody's in the wraparound, works through the wraparound model, one of the most important things that we identify are natural supports. And if people really choose to include their natural supports or not. And sometimes you get the sense that the real supports, the actual natural supports that people are using, never get their names on the list of who we're supposedly including in this. So the idea is really our clients can really choose. They can bring in their natural supports, and we have to be able to allow them. Is that a fair way of saying that? That's right. The ability to sustain services. Sustained services, yep, that's right. That's right. You're giving them the referrals, and do they follow through with that stuff or not? Right. You can't force that. You can't make that to happen, and that's in their power and control, and that's where it should be. Is that another fair way of saying it? Absolutely. Good. Other where clients have powers. Sure, they can participate or not. They have the power to participate. The power to participate in service provision, or not. Or not. Mr. Pressie. Hire and fire. Think about that. Who's really in charge of you being there? Really? And it can get difficult for them to fire us because it's a convoluted network, but when it comes down to it, if they work that network, we can be fired. Is that right, Doc? Yeah. They have the power to change. Can you force someone to change? Can you make that happen on them? You can put change on them. It would happen in them. Sure. That's a good point. No, I would not say that these are mutually exclusive. And Ms. Rose is bringing up a good point. Do these, we're talking about culture and power, and later on we're going to talk about culture and values. Are these the same thing? And oh, I'm sorry. So what they're recording right now is all going to be on culture and power. And then we're going to take those sheets down, and then the next thing they'll be setting to record will be on culture and values. So that's a bit how it's good. Excellent. Super. Anything else that our clients have power over? Or they should have power over? Clients are more powerful than we give them credit for. That's something that I want people to really think about, and I don't want that to diminish or underscore the fact that they also oftentimes find themselves robbed of a sense of power or whatever. But the idea is true power, and I'm not talking about external force, but I'm talking about true power to change really is in the individual. So if you are not wanting to receive a certain group of services, if you are not really wanting to, if somebody's AODA, one of the things that we'll ask when I do working with clinicians and we're consulting with one another, I'll ask whose problem is that? Because whoever's upset about it, that's whose problem it is. The person who's drinking and using, and maybe that's consistent with the way their life direction is going right now, well, it might be problematic for everybody in their life, but if they're not the one bringing the problem in, it's not their problem, It's the solution, perhaps, to their problem, and we got to figure out what the problem really is. But if people don't want to change, that's power. If people want to change and they're committed to it, that's power. Anything else on this? The power of our client. What should they have power and control over? All right. Now I want you to think, this is going to be one that's going to require a little bit more, and the bullet point model is going to get harder from this point here. I'm afraid, scribes. But we're going to try to keep it to the point that we can get specific ideas. And what I want people to think about now is we kind of discussed this and digested it from the professional standpoint and from the client standpoint. Now think, how do culture and power interact? What are some examples of ways that you see one culture exerting power over other cultures? Now you can go in all sorts of directions around this, so I would like people to try to focus on a particular area, and that is, when might you most notice this in the work that you do? So think from your professional standpoints now, the roles that you're serving. And in what way does culture sometimes interact with power? How does that happen? How does one culture seem to overpower another? Any examples of this? Miss Rose, if Miss Rose wasn't here, you guys would all be in trouble right now.
When I was working, I was in the corporate accounting, and I had the power to pay or not to pay, depending upon what makes sense for the position. And when men did not wish to do work with women, they would quote unquote stick their secretaries on it. And I said, you cannot make a decision, you will not get paid. So eventually what happened was the head of presidents and CEOs would lift up their secretary to a position of power.
Wow. So look at Mr. Rose was talking about is think about the culture of sexism, gender bestowed power, and how somebody, a male, usually in an executive kind of position, how that position of the secretary served subservient often to the wishes of the executive. Is that fair to say? But who's actually doing this stuff is the secretary. So gender bias in workplace, Ms. Rose, is that close enough? Think about how gender bias shapes, how gender impacts who has power. And then there's two forms of power, the power of the doer and the power of the executor. I believe only if there's a true partnership between whoever's in what role can anything happen, because a secretary can make the executive's job really difficult, right? Okay, we'll see how quickly that gets sent out, right? And the executive can also make the job awful for the secretary if they want to lord their power over them. So think about power in relation to gender and that age-old model of the secretary, the executive. All right, and what other ways do you see culture and power interacting? Jolene. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yes. So think about historical trauma impacting upon the services we provide. That's huge. In you come. Oh, here's the person that's going to solve your family situation. And in comes Jolene. And the person's interacted historically, generations, with Jolene's. And now comes another. Think about that. And how culture within social service organizations and our relationship to power in the past gets us into trouble. Culture and power. Can other people see how these two things relate to one another? Jolene, do you feel empowered and powerful as a clinician when you're engaging with someone who has strong biases against social service providers? Do you feel like you've got power in that situation, or do you feel marginalized in your power, in your true power? Uh-huh. So it's almost like, at this point, it's almost like a hot potato. It's like you don't want to be in that position of being seen as the person as the power broker. Historically, though, maybe that's not how it always was in helping professions. Historically, people had the power over the client, perhaps. And now we're in a position, and I think your organization trying to align with a mission of empowering the client. I'm getting that right, I hope. So the idea is where does the power should be with the client. But the client is responding to historical trauma. They're responding to history. Yes. Yeah, systems still carrying power. So maybe that's something we can put down. And then think about how those are systems that are cultural in nature also. We haven't defined the word culture. We decided to leave it artfully vague. So as people are talking about this, I want people to think about this word applied in different ways. Is there a culture? Could you describe a culture of a judicial system? There's a certain culture within a judicial system. Lots of heads are nodding. There's a certain culture within social services. So there's a certain culture within psychologists and psychology. So think about this broadly and then how these relate to power. So sometimes things that are written down on paper, that's what gives power. And sometimes there's a cultural influence on things where it's the good old boy network type thing or something. And people are going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to do how they're going to do it. And that doesn't feel very empowering. Culture and power. Thank you. My perspective is going to help. Good, thank you. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yes. Private pay versus public resources, but public, two different things. So think about how is your organization, now imagine we were in, has anybody had the opportunity recently, this is a community that's probably underserved and a high need population, and I'm going to talk about it. Anybody, and also this is the one high need population that you actually get paid a lot for. Okay, this is called working for celebrities. Does anybody have a mental health practice that's working specifically with celebrities? Or show of hands, anybody? No, oh, they didn't make it. All right, they're probably busy. They do private clinics, and I guarantee when requests are made for records and your child is, and it's Johnny Depp's kid, there's a little bit more thought and apprehension about sharing some of that information. Who's paying for services? Really? How does that change how power exists with that client? Oh, you're not paying for it. What do you mean I'm not paying for it? I'm a citizen. I'm a taxpayer. I'm of course paying for this. No, the other people are paying the taxes for this. You're a subject to that. Other way that power and values interact. There's not right answers here. I'm just wanting people to think on this. Ms. Rose? Sure.
Because those are people who most need are the ones that have the least attention, positive attention.
Sure.
To maintain the quality of life.
Sure. So the persons with with greater need have less access to power. Is that fair to say? And the public transit system, has anybody been under a rock to know what's being referred to here in the public transit system? What is Ms. Rose talking about? What's happened with the public transit system recently? Your clients are complaining about it, I guarantee, and you'll be complaining about it soon enough. They're getting ready to get rid of the Go Pass. Oh, all right, sure, right, for seniors. So there's a selective disempowered group now that's not going to be able to getting on the Go Pass any longer. That's a big thing. Who to share, yeah, disseminating information is also an area where power and culture. Anything else that people have an example of where culture and power interact?
I think sometimes there's evidence-based practices that aren't
Sure. Let's just put evidence-based practice down. Now think of the regards to evidence-based practice really it suggests that society is best served when we have practices that have been proven to work. Show of hands if you think it's better in general if the therapy works. Do you think does it make a difference if it's going to work or not? Do people want to make sure that their therapy is going to help their client? Raise your hand if you want the client to actually, if you want the client to actually be helped. Does anybody? Okay, good. So that's the idea kind of behind evidence-based is that, okay, well, if we show that the client's going to be helped, then we know it's going to really help them, and that's the logic. But the thing that might be overlooked is that how are tests devised? How are research studies devised? Who's identified in the research study? What are we doing? Are we empowering families to be back together through that research, or are we treating a specific condition, social phobia, with that condition? So if you really think about those types of things, does evidence-based practice really represent what's best for the client that you're actually serving, that individual at that individual level? And there's assumptions, I think, and that comes back to a scientific assumption too, that if we compare groups that are similar, that is going to carry over for that entire group. Think about what that suggests. That one service, it will impact upon an entire population. That suggests something. So think about that. When you're looking at evidence-based practices, there might be some cultural assumptions and some assumptions around you're not dealing with an individual, you're dealing with a group, you're dealing with a demographic. And now that doesn't set as well. So whether your evidence-based practice, where you're getting your evidence from, is a cultural matter. It's power informed by culture. All right. All right, so I'm going to hand the microphone over for Mr. Pressie. He's going to ask you some questions. We're going to discuss about this. Note takers, round of applause for note takers. Let's get the first set of notes down, and I'm going to help with this. We're going to set the first set of notes down, and Mr. Pressie is going to discuss some other things. We're going to the next section here then.
Okay, so now we're going to discuss some of the things that we just talked about. How do you engage with people you serve around the issue of culture? How do you do that? Any hands? How do you engage with people you serve around the issue of culture? How do you engage, how do you engage with the people you serve around the issue of culture? I know the issue comes up. Whatever you want to perceive as culture. Because culture could mean a variety of things. So you, Ms. Rose?
What I do is I always try to share with them that if you have where the rules, the policies, or procedures of any entity, so that you can be determined, if many people do not read and know it, that gives you a lot of hope. And you can make and you've got that to support you, and it helps you to win whatever situation you're in.
Okay. Anyone else? I'm sorry. Can you expand on that a little bit? So acting as if it's not in the room is really like an insult, correct? Okay. Anyone else? I mean, culture is so broad. You can have two people of the same ethnic group and have different cultures. You mean everybody doesn't come the same way? Exactly right. Understanding the person's story is huge. Anyone else? Culture. Yes. Right. Okay. Okay. So allowing them to like have the reins of how their treatment goes instead of dictating to them what's supposed to work for them. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, doctor. So it's like their story, right? So you need to listen to your clients instead of imposing our belief system onto our clients. Great. Anyone else? Anything different? I mean, this is kind of a loaded question. I do understand that. But it's to get you really thinking about, the individual sitting in front of you and their story could make them very unique in getting that and being able to work in their story rather than imposing our beliefs on to our clients. Yes, Ms. Rose?
Then we try to get all the varying religious conferences in our society to write to a particular politician. And because of the diversity in our society, we have to kind of generalize it in such a manner that it doesn't look like it's only one group of people that's receiving, because most of the churches receive the negativity of one culture, of a culture is made to be the recipient, which will keep people turned off to one point. And it's just clarifying in a general manner so that it doesn't do that thought process.
So you kind of talked in code. I got what you said. Are there any questions about what Ms. Rose said? Okay, great. Can you say that again, but a little louder? I think it's important what she said.
What I'm saying is,
Here.
Being a member of the St. Vincent de Paul Society, I also am on the board of the Voice of the Poor. And what we do is we try to find any bills or policies that the politicians are getting ready to make that are discriminatory toward the people that are in most need. So we have to generalize it in such a way, because there's so many churches involved in this, on these conferences, and because they're all of different ethnic backgrounds, by generalizing it, it makes it easier for them to accept, to support us, because many times the face of those in most need are usually people of color. And in order to keep people who assume that people of color, the negative of people of color, we generalize it so it doesn't spell out any specific ethnicity. So then they are more apt to support that bill or policy, or call their politician and say, no, we don't want that bill or policy.
Any questions? Great. All right. We're going to move on. What do you do to currently account for power differentials? Yes.
I work for CPL, and one thing I do is to try to really empower the knowledge.
Okay.
Essentially, they do have the power. You just have to know that.
Right. Yeah, a lot of times, and I do a lot of work with CPS clients as well, and a lot of things they don't know or as Dr. Ben was saying, their way of navigating the system just sometimes doesn't work. And so empowering them with the knowledge of what they need to do to get their children back is huge. Anybody else? What do you do currently to account for power differentials? Yes?
I'm a school social worker for MPS. So I explain to families that I'm there to work for them and their children.
Okay.
So I provide them with, so just because I work at the school doesn't mean that, I'm there to work for the students.
So they're the boss.
In their best interest, I'm going to advocate for them.
Okay. So you let them know that they're in charge. Okay. Yes.
For me, I work out at work. And working with families, sometimes families are special people, and I'm very cognizant of what I represent and try to break that down a little bit, make them more comfortable. They need to be comfortable with me.
Okay. That makes sense. So you make them feel comfortable. Yes.
A big piece that we're trying to do, that we need to do better on, is educating ourselves about, maybe our positions of power and how it's going to affect someone who isn't in the same culture as I am, and what I represent to them. So I think the educating ourselves piece is just as crucial as mitigating pieces of it.
I agree. Yes. I agree. Yes, Dr. Pressie. I've made a lot of mistakes in my career. Believe me, I've made a lot of mistakes. And my clients always re-educate me. They always make more sense, which I really appreciate. So, yeah, being open to learning from your clients is huge. Learning how much power I have, I learn from them, which is great. Anyone else? How do you currently account for the power differentials? Yes. Okay. So nonverbals. Okay. Anyone else like to share? Okay, so we'll move on. What can you do to support and empower those you serve? That's part of what we're doing, right? Is empowering, correct? So what do you do currently to empower the folks that you serve?
One thing I do is I kind of piggyback to, but meeting them at where they're at,
Okay.
how can we grow from there?
Okay. So meeting them where they're at and seeing how we can move from there. Okay. Anyone else like to share? I know everybody's doing it. Who would like to share? Yes. Okay, being an advocate, going farther than maybe you have to. Anybody else? Yes? Ms. Rose?
When those of opportunity achievement with the young people in the schools, one of the things is to let them know that you're there for them, and that for those that felt that they were able to make life in an illegal way, and you just let them know that you don't have to worry about waking up there the next morning and not going to kept all the other students
Something like what Freeway Ricky Ross does.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah, that's the tricky part about support. The client has to allow you to do that for them, right? Yes. Yeah, usually when people call a supervisor, they want to talk and work with the supervisor, right? Yeah, great. Any other ways that you support and empower the people you serve? Yes. It's a wraparound model, yeah. So, okay. Yeah, it's huge. A lot of times we talk about shame-based. A lot of times our clients feel very ashamed of who they are, and building on the strengths that they have gives them hope that they can make changes. Correct? In other ways, that's a great way to empower your clients. That's a wraparound model. If anyone's heard of Wraparound Milwaukee, that's a wraparound model of change, is empowering people through their strengths. Anyone else want to share? Okay. Then we'll move on to part 2, culture and values. What are some of the core values that you subscribe to in the position you serve? The core values that you subscribe to in the position you serve. Yes.
Honesty.
And why is that important, Ms. Rose?
Because people will feel that you, by being honest and truthful, they'll feel that you're sincere about what you're doing, that you mean, rather than you're just saying it to appease. And I think it's very important for people to feel comfortable and understand that what's coming from your heart is more important, that you're not worried about rules and regulations, you're worried about them.
It's huge. Working with people, I would imagine that's very important. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I think if I'm standing in front of a judge and I'm wondering what's the judge going to take away from me, would probably be a very disempowering position to be in. Anyone else? Yes. How do you use empathy? Just out of curiosity, so you can let us all know. Fantastic. It's great. When you do that, then you can really feel like where that person's at, or understand where that person's at, and know how to align yourself, meet them where they're at, and move on, right? Dr. Pressie. Respect, dignity. Yes. Transparency, wow. Being honest. No matter what the answer is, they might like it, they might not, but being honest is huge with the clients, yes, with anyone. It kind of helps if you're doing the same thing that you're saying, right? Yeah. Yes. And it usually ends up that way, doesn't it? It usually gets harder before it gets better. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes. Can you say that again, please? Can you say that again, please? Patience. And one other person. Independence. Yes.
Is that in the ACA ethics code? Great.
Recognition of implicit bias, that like I do things and they read things so that I have to be able to acknowledge that that may be working inside of me when I'm making decisions.
It's huge. So does anyone here do consultation of any sort through the process of the work they do, where they're talking to somebody else and another person's kind of bouncing things off of them? And sometimes you see it and it's like kind of ugly, like, wow, did I really do that? I think that helps a lot, do that. Any other core values that you subscribe to in the position you serve? Okay. Okay, the next question is, what are some of the distinctive cultural and/or personal values held by those you served, which may or may not be held by mainstream society? So this is a really loaded question. Out of our clinic, we work with refugees. We work with probably the largest Hmong population to get therapeutic services in Milwaukee County. I think the second largest in the state. And so there are a lot of distinct cultural differences or perceived differences between the mainstream American cultures and some of the people we serve that are not from America. Yes.
I would say one of the basic things is to recognize that no culture is monolithic.
Wow. So no culture is monolithic.
Again, Ms. Rose is not put up.
Yeah, we pay Ms. Rose.
We will be paying her now.
We pay Ms. Rose.
So that is our core thought here today, is that no culture monolithic. Yet there are differences, you can see some values.
Very correct. That's one thing that I've learned working in this field, is that a lot of the cultures that I work with that aren't American are more about us than me. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
That's our culture, you say?
Promotes violence and wars.
How might other cultures be different? What might some other cultures value that's different than what we value? That doesn't come up.
I can think of a few cultures like that. Yes, sure. Yes. Skepticism? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
other cultures have skepticism? Sure.
Yes. Law enforcement is not here to protect and serve you. Different than other cultures? I would, I would agree with you. Everybody doesn't have the same value. Dress code.
Unpack that a little bit. What do you see with the dress code? Yep, sure. Talking about how culturally dictate what we put on our body, and basic sense of physical sense and how you present basically through a cultural lens. Hijabs, I imagine fitting in is a good example of that, perhaps. What you cover, what you have uncovered.
Yes. Right. 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 And we, right. We have a clash of cultural beliefs regarding that right here in America, depending on if your family is Southern or Northern, correct? Yes, Dr. Pressie. Right. Yeah, Milwaukee is very interesting. The north side, you might have a doctor or a lawyer or someone professional living on the next block from someone who is not working at all, or someone who is making minimum wage, or someone who's selling drugs. So Milwaukee's north side is very mixed.
You mentioned religion. I wonder if that's something that highlight that within
Right.
culture, and I'm not talking broad. I mean, there's a difference between Protestant, Catholic, Evangelical, Lutheran, Presbyterian, or whatever. So religious values factor in. It's a good catch.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Healing and medicinal practices, right?
Mental health beliefs. I have a lot of clients that I've had to really work with them on educating what medicine is for, and if it's, it's not for everybody, but so they can make a better decision for themselves. Yeah.
Like education versus work. We have many students that come to work or come to school late because they were at work working third shift, or they leave early because they're going to work and they reach out to their parents, so they think that that's acceptable, that they should be working. So
Yeah. It's definitely a culture. All right. In what ways have you seen your own personal or professional values clash with the distinctive cultural, familial, or personal values of the persons you serve? That's a mouthful. Your personal or professional values clash with, and I can think of maybe 10 right off the top of my head, of ways that it could clash, or it has clashed with my clients' beliefs in the past. How about some of yours? Yes.
I can think, I'm a nurse, my background's a nurse, but coming from that aspect, with my treatment for sickle cell, we get into a crisis. It's to give a blood transfusion. And I had patients who were also Jehovah's Witnesses who also had sickle and having that crisis and having struggled.
Right.
Well, of course you're going to transfuse, because you're not going to do it.
Yeah, great example. Yes, Mr. Rose?
I used to be a member of the Psychological Society, and my analysis that class with the majority of the members there was the practicality of things instead of always looking at the theoretical thought process. Many times the answers are very simple, and that's where I find my biggest clash.
That's interesting. So that's a nuanced one, and I think what you're picking up on is the idea of being very theoretical or very practical minded. That's a clash of values within our profession. So you may be psychoanalytic minded and not looking at things from a practical necessarily standpoint. So you're experiencing this clash when you're on a team of fellow professionals. This is kind of how I experience. I'm a pragmatic person, and this is how my colleagues are. Good catch.
Yes.
Energy.
Can you expound on that just a little bit?
The whole scope of everything around there. They discipline for this. I know I would do it that way. Or they're treating them this. I know I would do it this way.
Very good example. Yes.
We have at times a very loud and rowdy clinic. Now there's certain hours when you start thinking about who are you scheduling when, because you don't want kids being frightened and stuff like that. But I've heard some loud couples counseling in the office next door, and I'm thinking. At one time I would have been like, my phone on to call 911, and now I'm like, oh, it's going good in there. She's got it going today. And I know they're going to make progress, so thank you. That's a true. That expression of emotion is largely cultural value.
Oh, yeah.
And it can crash with us personally. But professionally, we know let people feel what they're feeling, but I'm still of a certain make and nature, so I'm not comfortable making it. Good catch.
Good.
Also, conjunction with that would be that it's misunderstood the trueness of how they really feel. And they associate it with from their own culture rather than difficult.
That's right. So people express different emotions in different ways, and you may misconstrue what the emotion is.
Right. Some groups are more are louder, or more demonstrative than other groups.
Being disengaged in some cultures is more of a threat than getting yelled at. So if your parents disengage, it's actually showing they don't care. If they're being yelled
That's
at,
okay.
then you're actually
They care.
showing that you're invested. So.
Right. Yeah. Any other hands? Anyone else like to share? Okay.
I'm going to put one out there just to be compelling. Drug use. Drug use. I mean, I think most of us as professionals will say that's not, no one's ever advocating for people to use street drugs. I'm not talking, medication could also be. But I would say, what about drug use? If somebody is approaching this from a certain standpoint, I'm not suggesting any culture per se has the idea that this culture is embracing drug use, but you can talk about street culture or something of that nature. There's a group thing where people are saying, I'm going to use because that's what I do and how I go about. And our culture beer everywhere,
Right.
and that's all right. But and culturally, that's okay. But you're going to smoke weed now. It starts making a difference. Or other street drugs in general. So it's street drugs, drug use. We have personal, professional values around that. But the client might not share those. So think about it. It's not your values.
By the way, clients have shared that with me, especially the young clients with the cannabis use. They talk a lot about the beer gardens and the other alcohol celebrated things in Milwaukee. Interesting.
Imagine a marijuana garden. I mean, just get your mind around it. You know? We're just so habituated to what has to be hidden, what's supposed to be.
Right.
Just brought back something that bothers me, and that is examples that are always utilized are big classroom factors. Just because I have a problem with people comparing alcohol and marijuana on a basis. That's too long of a thing of a challenge.
Sure. Yeah, of course, please. Right. Yeah, good.
All right. We'll move on
Let's
to
do the discussion here, and then we're going to go kind of quick now, because I think people are getting the idea. Now, this is where rubber's going to hit the road, and I want more interaction. So I just want people to think here a little bit. I'm going to talk here. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm not sure if our recording's going to be able to hear. This is something I just want. We're not going to talk about each one of these things, but I'm going to throw them out here. I want you to be thinking. Now that we talked about culture and power. Now we're talking about culture and values. And in what ways do your professional priorities shape your response to what you do on a daily basis? And I want you just to think about that. You know, I teach at Mount Mary, and I was joking here when Sarah in the back was mentioning the idea of autonomy and independence. This language is actually in the ACA culture, in the ethics code. So when you get trained somewhere, the assumptions of that training start factoring into how you operate. And where we're comfortable encouraging autonomy with a 14-year-old client, hey, mom, step outside. We got this. You know, this kid has to open up and share and feel comfortable with me. That's consistent with good counseling practices. But it might not be consistent with the values that families have about protecting their children. So they're going to be leaving the stranger in a room with their kid to talk about their family. You know, think about how that, you know, our values are not always part and parcel the same as what our in our professional roles as what, and in fact, many of us would be comfortable providing therapy and a little uncomfortable having our child receive therapy. Just think about it from a personal basis, as a parent versus as a professional. How might you go about addressing a situation in which your professional priorities necessitate action on an area where differing value systems are evident? Think about that. So the child has some marks due to corporal punishment. You see bruising on the arm, and it's probably where mom was holding the arm and paddling the behind, you know? But I know that this is a Somali Bantu family, and I know that this is a value that where she's trying to parent the way that she knows how. So how do I get into that? When do I call and when do I not call? How have your own cultural or personal values been triggered in your work? That's something to think about, because we're not going there, and we had an excellent example in the back. I'm here as a professional therapist, and I know emotions are part of it, but I have this kind of Anglo-Saxon history being brought up. I don't always feel comfortable talking about emotions or when people express emotions. So you can experience that divide about what your professional experience is and what your personal values are. And then the last one, what are some ways that we can respond to a clash of values between ourselves when these occur? And I was going to ask for examples on this too, but in the interest of time, we're just going to, I think, keep going. I know that from my own experience, I will acknowledge with language a difference in values. It can be that simple. Oh, this is interesting, I'll say. Because as a clinician, I'm feeling like I have to do this, that, and the other thing to keep you safe. And what you're saying is you actually want to be able to do this thing or that thing because you're sick of other people telling you what to do. And now we're in a situation where, as a professional, I can tell you what to do and you cannot do it and rebel, or I can do something different. And I wonder what I can do that won't make you rebel and will allow us to work together. So the idea is, if you can just acknowledge when those things are happening, you can put language behind that. You value independence, and I have that before. You know, the kid that doesn't show up for a couple weeks, and finally we find him. Man, you are an independent-minded person. I love that. You know, no one's going to tell you what to do. So you can acknowledge and align with that value. You don't have to malign it at all. Hey, listen, man, I don't want to hold my schedule, and then they're going to give you another therapist. So we got to figure out how to make it so that you can be independent and not put a hole in my schedule and then maybe lose somebody who's trying to help you. So those are things that I think if we're really looking at, parenting is a really good example. I know with having make the call, and I don't shun from that. I don't shy from it the way I used to. I've done it maybe in a different way now, and I often will make collaborative calls. I'll say, in my role, you may know there's this thing called mandated reporting. I care about you, and I'm so biased on your side that it's hard for me to see this from a standpoint other than your standpoint, and that can get me in some tricky situations here. I don't want to overlook something that we need to be addressing in another way. I have to make a telephone call. I would feel most comfortable if you made it with me. And then I let them hear the report and the information I share, and I hand the phone over and say, did I miss anything? So that in that scenario, and I'm not saying that your values are right or wrong, I'm just saying that it's put me in a situation where, as a professional, under these situations, I have to do this certain thing. And I'm not owning that value as an individual, I'm only owning it as a professional in this role that I'm serving right now. Does that make some sense? Okay, so those are ideas anyways. This could be easily a day-long workshop, and one of the fun things about what we do is to kind of get out and get a sense for what has got talking power and what really allows us to keep going. And I would like feedback when we're done about ways that we can maybe have conversations like this in your neck of the woods with people that you're already working with, because I think these are perspectives we'd like to get out to providers and community members as much as possible. All right, so now we're moving on to, this is, I'm going backwards. There we go. Health and healing. So this is just discussion part. You guys, a round of applause right now for our excellent scribes. They've done a phenomenal job. I may hire them professionally, take them on the road. This next part, we're going to go into a back and forth discussion piece, and I'm going to hand the mic maybe back and forth at some points my voice necessitates, because we are still going to end with some brainstorming where we want to write on the board again. But this is all discussion, so loosen up, people. Get limber. All right, sometimes our role in serving others are impeded by strong perceptions that are held by those we serve. Is that true? So the clients we're serving have strong perceptions about us or about services, and that can impede on things. At other times, how we are viewed by, sometimes, let me say again, sometimes our role in serving others are impeded upon by strong perceptions that are held by those we serve. Oh, I think I'm saying this twice. At other times, how we are viewed by those we serve make it difficult for us to do our job. I said that wrong. Sometimes it gets in our way that we are perceived in a certain way by our clients, and sometimes our biases about our clients get in our way. We carry our own biases. Automatic thinking happens to all of us, and it's organized by culture, power, and history. So all of us have times where we have automatic thoughts and bias. In these circumstances, our good intentions get lost, and we may serve to actually have, they may actually serve to have a detrimental impact on those we serve. So, what are we going to do about that? How are we perceived? Let's take a moment to see yourself through the eyes of those you serve now. Whoever that is, think about the clients at your clinic, the people in your practice, or that you're serving in your role. How are you really perceived by them? Think about this. This might be difficult to do emotionally. It can be hard for us to take that leap. What are some perceptions that those you serve might have held of you before they got to know you? And I want to open the can on this. Is you can look at it, they may see you as a provider in your professional role. They may have biases about your professional role. We're tearing the place apart here. They may have biases about you because of your ethnic or racial background, because of the way you're presented. They may have, based on your age or on your gender. But think about in what are the ways that you may experience perceptions or misperceptions from your client. And bold people now, I want the bold people, share what are some perceptions that those have had, that others have held of you. Yes? What's that? Baby stealers. Here come the baby stealers, yes. The polyester baby stealing brigade, you know, in they come, right? And they're just going to snatch them up. Think about how that, if that's a perception when you're walking in the door, wow. Now that's what you have to get past. That people are terrified. Baby stealers, excellent. Other perceptions that people have. The white girl doesn't know anything about parenting a black baby. So how many years have you been working in the field, Katie? 6.5 years. And as you continue and as the number continues to grow, your whiteness never changes, you know? You could be an expert on being able to work with the population that you're serving, but if you look in a certain way, it's going to impact upon you the same way. Other perceptions. How have you been impacted, perceived? How have you been perceived? Dr. Pressie. Are you a mind reader? Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, because you're a psychologist, you're a mind reader. So that really puts people in a great cooperative mind. You know, this person can read my mind. On one hand, I don't have to tell him anything he should know. On the other hand, I don't even want to be in the same room with the guy because he can read my thoughts, right? Think about that. Other perceptions that people have had of you in your role. And I want people to speak from the heart now and from the personal experience.
I've had parents believe that I can fix their child.
Oh yeah, the kid needs to be fixed. Mr. Pressie's going to fix him. You're going to lock them up. That's it. Here they come. And that's a perception. Some can say that a self-fulfilling prophecy also. Oftentimes that's what it ends up happening, is that how people perceive you determines how we engage in that moment. Other things, other ways that people are being perceived. What's that? Nosy. These are some nosy people. And that's a perception that people have coming in. We had Katie shared what it's like being a Caucasian serving African American group. Do we have any other groups, anybody else that could speak on behalf of what it's like of maybe serving another group? And I'm particularly curious, Aaron and I had this conversation before, anybody might be able to share what's it like being an African American or a client or a person of color in general who now has to serve mainstream. Yes, my hand is right up. Ah, the Uncle Tom thing. Now we're talking. Because that term disempowers a person within their community as well as outside of the community. You become the uncle. Does anybody not know the Uncle Tom reference? So the idea that you're working for the man, that you don't really have your own voice, you're not really employed to serve your population. Thank you. Other? Being white. Oh, tell me about that.
Well, because I don't have a southern drawl like the fellows expected. The reason I got certain jobs is because I was born here, I was an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't have any problems with the thought process. My English was, it's just you're different, all that stuff.
Sure. So if you're looking at it from the standpoint of you're serving someone who now feels like you aren't a real representative of, you're not black enough. Think about that, how that impacts upon power. And I guarantee Ms. Rose is not the only person who's experienced this in this room. How about anybody who's tried to serve white families? Any person of color, what's been that?
Sometimes it's perceived you don't know what you're doing because you're black.
Has that ever happened? Oh, the other professionals and everyone's listening. And then when you get to the African American professional, people disengage. Clients may look at you, you're their therapist, and then they look at another white team member to confirm whether that's right. So think about the way this all impacts. And the reason I wanted to bring this in is because this is really where it's going to matter now. All this conceptual stuff doesn't really matter. If we're talking about health and healing and growth, we have to look at who we are and how we're perceived. And it's not an easy thing to do. What assumptions do people make about your values? We've kind of been talking about this, and your beliefs. And what I didn't get into is, how does this make you feel now? Think about those things that people who've shared before, when you're perceived in a certain way. If you're perceived as an Uncle Tom, if you're perceived as the white woman who doesn't know how to serve, if you're perceived as not black enough, whatever it might be, or incompetent or inept, how does this make people feel? Ms. Rose, how did you feel?
Basically, I was raised to love me.
Ah,
Therefore, it's my profession that the people who used to tell that, I would share information with them and tell them, number one.
yes,
If I were in your shoes, I might be doing what you do.
right, right,
If you were in my shoes, I might be doing what I do.
right. So,
So therefore, I'm there to take care of you and to help you if you want.
yeah,
Don't want to interrupt you, take care of you.
yeah. It sounds like a healthy counter stance against unhealthy emotions that rise up, but it's also something that we have to do a lot. We have to get into this headspace to pull ourselves away from what? Feelings. What are the feelings? Mm-hmm. Yes. And when you overwork yourself and burn yourself out, how do you feel then? What's a word? A feeling word. Overwhelmed. Is it overwhelming to do your job? Think about that. This is overwhelming. How else do people feel when your voice is taken away from you because of perceptions? Sad. You know, you're supposed to take other people's mental health. You're walking out of the place feeling sad and frustrated. How else do you feel? In the back. Defensive. So now I'm in the defender. That's real helpful, having a defensive mental health professional, right? No, I'm good. I can prove it, you know. So I'd play that game. I don't play it as much any longer. You know, now I almost embrace it in some ways and see what I can do with it. But the idea of just having to prove them wrong. How does this impact upon your ability to do your job? Think about that. When you're feeling that way, defensive, overwhelmed, how does that impact on your ability to do your job? Sad. Anybody find themselves near that burnout threshold at some point in their career? You pull up to work and you get that feeling in your stomach, you don't want to be there? You know, think about how that impacts on your ability. You're not going to listen to your client anymore because you know your client's not going to hear what you're saying anyways.
The first 2 years, I was about to quit my position. And I decided, no, I'm not going to quit till I get ready to leave.
Yeah.
And I just make the game of negative and turn it into a
Into the positive.
and do that by taking all the negative and just weighing and knowing the rules and policies and what you can do, what you cannot, and feel the flow.
I want you to just sit for a moment and think about what Ms. Rose was talking about, that first couple years when you're in the service, and then you really have to decide, I'm going to make a go of it. You know, that feeling of discouragement that we have from time to time, or being overwhelmed or sad, frustrated. Is everybody kind of getting there? Now let's pay attention to something else. How do we perceive our clients? Because perceptions, whether people say it or not, we sense it, right? We feel that. What are some assumptions that exist regarding the group or groups that you serve? Brave people now. Think of who you're serving. What are some assumptions that people have about that group? Don't care about their kids. These people don't care about their kids. Anybody feel that assumption before amongst peers, that there's an assumption out there, these people don't care about their kids? What other assumptions float around out there, get in the way of us being able to have? That they'll never change. Oh, these clients will never change. Is that an assumption that we've heard before? That people sometimes have? Have you ever heard that on a team meeting? On the side? What other assumptions do people have? That they need to change. Whose assumption is that to begin with? This person needs to change. There's something wrong with them. The strength-based approach, we say in the solution focus, is there's more that's right with you than what's wrong with you. You know, where's that idea when we think somebody needs to change? Other things, perceptions that people have. Perceptions about our youth. Let's be specific. What perceptions do we have about our youth? They don't say they don't want. There's an assumption they don't want this education that's out there, the white man's education. There's an assumption, perhaps. Maybe they do. How to get them into buying into the idea of even going on with education and so forth. What else? What else? How else are our youth perceived, sometimes misperceived? Think about how these negatively impact upon those we serve. How is it that thinking about somebody they're not going to change, how does that impact upon our ability to change them or for them to enter into the change process if we're assuming they don't want to change? If we don't think they want to be good parents, yep. What's the point of putting in the effort? Just like how would you feel if somebody thought that you're just that white lady who can't help me, you're feeling pretty discouraged. And if they're sensing that we believe that they're not really wanting to change, why should they try changing? This is where we get the stagnant thing from. This is where our difficult clients come from. It's a transaction between the two of us, a shared chemistry of dejected brokenness. How do these assumptions negatively impact upon our ability to help the client? Then I think you just answered that question as well. How can you help them if they are not feeling that you're there, that your assumptions are against them and their ability to change? So one thing that I want people to think about is bidirectional growth and change. What are some ways that you have seen those that you have served experience growth and healing related to your relationship with them? I'm sorry, this got cut off. Our slides use a different computer here. Can anybody give us a positive example now, your relationship, how it's changed somebody? Ms. Rose, yes?
Just happened to have a repast. A friend of mine passed, and his daughter said to me, "Thank you for being there for me because I learned a lot from you."
Thank you for being there for me. And someone has been able to say that. Great. Wow. Thinking about mental illness as being its own demographic group, is another group that's at risk, so that has its own sense of social exclusion that they experience. And to be thanked on a regular basis for listening and understanding, right? How else have you changed clients? Anybody want to share? All of a sudden, now the student's showing up, right? And that's because of the relationship you had with them. I'm going quick because I know we don't have enough time for everything. There's a hand here, somebody? Yeah, Dr. Pressie? Yeah. I love this. Dr. Pressie bring up another important point, and that is, it's not just my relationship with the client, but it's the whole team that keeps showing up persistently, and they have a relationship with that. How might the relationship have positively impacted upon the client? impacted upon the clients, this is cut off view of others. Think about that. Now, if they're able to work with you and you're able to listen to them, how might that shape their way of thinking about other people who look like you, or other people in your role, or other people of your gender, or whatever, of your age? Think about once you start sharing, yeah, mm-hmm. At that's interesting, yes, right. In a good way, yeah, and that's taken a long time, huh? But it carries over. Those negative transference can carry over, positive transference can carry over to whole teams now. Your secretary may be seen favorably or unfavorably based on the relationship they have with you. Provider level change. Think about this. What are some ways that you have positively changed serving diverse communities? Anybody want to share? How have you been changed?
Has anyone been made aware of some of their biases by working with other groups? That helps you change, correct?
Yeah?
Mine deals with language.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bias in the sense that I believe once in America, everybody should speak English.
Ah, uh-huh.
And I feel that everybody has the right to speak whatever they want on it, but when it comes to crucial jobs that cause a lot of problems, health problems, that it needs to be oriented into that.
Now this part is about how you might have been changed by serving diverse groups. If it ever happened that you've changed the way you think because of your interaction.
I have changed my thought process as far as accepting people speaking different languages. I just haven't changed from the fact that people still need to know English in this country.
Ah, I got it.
I have changed on how the need is there for them to communicate with each other. But culturally, even though we might be staying differently, I don't understand how they're related in their own way.
Sure.
Therefore, they might need that.
So we have a change now. I can value the importance that groups need to talk with one another in the language they're comfortable with. At one time I thought, oh, everyone should speak one language, in our language, but now I realize it's important for people to be able to speak their native language with other people because it communicates ideas easier and more authentically. Other things that people may have changed, their ways that they've been changed by their experience? Slow down and really listen instead of jumping to assumptions. Does anybody feel more comfortable in their skin because of this? Maybe this is just me. Feel more confident in who you are, that you can fit in anywhere, that anybody you can interact with, you can make connection to. And at one time, maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe at one time it was, there's a certain group that I think I can work well with and others I don't. So think about that level of growth. And we're asking a lot of these already, and I know I'm just watching time we've got at the end here. The last thing we were going to do, and we don't have necessarily time for, and I'm looking, we're already a minute over. A round of applause for our people who didn't get a chance to write again. So the last thing I want people to do, just as we're wrapping up, is I want people to look around you today, and I want you to pay attention to who is it that's sitting in here with you. And if we have a goal now to to expand upon our own sense of self, our own identity, so that we can work with anybody. Part of what this is going to require is for us to be able to network with other people that are already out in the community serving different groups of people. So I'm curious about if you're going to find an opportunity today to connect with somebody around the around the issues of growth and healing through promoting diversity. And is diversity something that we're really thinking about in your workplace? It impacts upon your workplace, most definitely, the roles that you're serving. But are we able to have a dialogue about diversity with a monolithic group of people? I mean, how does that really work? If you're only talking to people that look like you about a group of people that doesn't look like you, how does that help us understand that other group of people any better? So one of the things I'd like for people to think about is we've come across the days of culture and power have a certain impact in relationship. Culture and values have a certain impact on one another. how is it that we now as providers, trying to be culturally informed and brave to be able to address these issues in the clinical hour, how do we better inform ourselves about culture and diversity? And where might we be able to get, sitting around you today, the answer? Where might we be able to get some new perspectives on stuff so we don't live in that tunnel vision for long that is unhealthy for us, that perpetuates our own perspectives and biases, and is unhealthy for our clients who then become limited because we're missing some blind spots here. So thank you for coming, and we did the right amount of work today. We just had the wrong amount planned. So I just want people to realize that what we accomplished is what we needed to accomplish. And then what's next? We going to lunch again?